you would say to your boss when you were in those situations where you felt you were ready for something bigger?
Ooh.
Okay, what did you do? Or what advice would you give me about it?
You just take the mirror, then you like that.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Hot Pot where we hop into different transitions in life. I'm Nick.
I'm Q.
And I'm Joey, and today we are discussing something that you guys might find a bit daunting and scary, which is discussing pay increments and job promotions with your boss.
And our special guest today is Crystal Lim.
Hey everyone, so happy to be here. I'm Crystal. I help companies, MNCs predominantly from all around the world work on their cultures so that they won't be termed as that toxic company. And I also am Singapore's work bestie and am always on social media helping people like with their work issues.
Wow, you play a very important role in our workforce, Crystal.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
I know. Sometimes I feel like I cannot sleep at night because I get like hundreds of DMs from people who are like, my nightmare boss, you know, what happened to me at work? I'm crying. Can you please help me? Sort of thing. But it's also such like a position of privilege to be in where people feel safe to share what's going on in their lives with you.
Have you ever gotten requests from people like, can you please come into my office and like,
oh my God.
sort it out?
Every day. They're like, can you come to my office and beat up my boss? Can or not? And I'm like, okay, got extra surcharge. Okay. Depends on how toxic your boss is. If your boss is really, really toxic, I give them a free beating up.
Are these people okay? Like, I feel like a lot of people are struggling with their career and work these days, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone is really struggling, and particularly in Singapore, we tend to be quite conflict avoidant, right?
Yes.
So it tends to be like the typical scenario is that people are like unhappy at work, but instead of give feedback to their boss or to the person that kind of pissed them off, they actually just store it inside and go around behind those people's back and just like, and then after they look for another job. And then what happens is that the bosses call me up and they're like, oh my God, the first time I knew that something was wrong was when the letter came. And I never even had the chance to like address the situation. And if I had known that they were unhappy, I could have given them a raise, I could have done something, I could have reassigned them. But the fact is that most Singaporeans particularly, they just don't self-advocate. They don't speak up.
So actually going back to today's topic where we are talking about pay increments, how to negotiate job promotions and things like that, right? A few jobs ago, many years ago, there was that moment where I really felt like undervalued, underappreciated. So subsequent like job searches after that, it was exactly what you mentioned, Crystal, where you need to advocate for yourself, you need to ask for what you want. So I think even just daring to like ask for what you want is a big step that a lot of people, they sometimes feel a bit scared to take.
They don't want to face the rejection lah.
Yeah.
You know, and also like a lot of people actually have limiting beliefs like I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And a lot of times like these things stem from childhood and we kind of carry them with us. And now even though we are older, we're wiser, we're more experienced, sometimes we let those like past hurts and memories of rejection actually hold us back in not just work, but also in relationships.
Right. So sometimes we don't really understand our value and how we should market ourselves. So how do you know your worth and value?
It's very important to do your homework. Okay, so data is power, knowledge is power. The first thing is you're gonna use the internet. Internet is your friend. And you can use like online salary calculators like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed. But the second thing, and I think much more important, is to actually gather data from good old-fashioned espionage.
Right.
So what I mean,
friends.
Yeah, exactly. So one really, really good source is like people in your company who have recently moved to another job, or even like people from another firm in your same industry. So there are certain industries like banking or like law, in which like it's very common for people to trade data points. And in fact, last time like we even have this like paper and a hat practice where like everybody gets into a meeting room after your bonus and you just write like what you got, right? Your bonus, everything.
Really?
And then
They
just
do
like
that.
crumple in a ball, right? And then just like put it inside like a hat or something,
I
right?
thought it's a no-no to talk about this thing.
No. You don't know who said what, right? So technically it's not like, you know, I divulge.
I know a lot of bosses, they, like I've heard personally, because at the time we were all sharing pays and we realized we are all severely like underpaid except the ones who brought it up.
Right.
And the ones who didn't dare to bring it up, they just stayed and maintained, and there were a lot of lies about numbers.
Oh no.
And then the boss was angry and then said, you guys should not be discussing pay because the pay is part of your contract and the contract is confidential, so you're breaking contract.
I mean, honestly, reasonable and professional employers will expect people to talk and they will make it as transparent as it can be. So I would actually take that sort of like, don't compare approach as a sign of guilt. It's like, what are you trying to cover up? You've got nothing to cover up. You shouldn't be so paranoid about like people talking about it. And I think it's a red flag. So another way you can do it is actually headhunters. And like headhunters are everywhere. I think a lot of Singaporeans don't actually understand that most savvy people regularly have a network of these kind of contacts. There's no shame in them. It doesn't mean that you're disloyal. And the way I kind of put it is that the headhunters will call and then they'll say like, oh, do you want to meet up? And I'll say like, look, I'm very happy where I am. I'm not actively looking, but I'm always interested in like trends, like what's going on in the market. So amongst most of us professionals in the industry, we would regularly have a practice of like maybe once a month, you go and catch up with like some headhunters at like Book Key, maybe one-on-one for like lunch or coffee. And honestly, they are the best source of intel. They will tell you who is hiring, who is firing, who has no budget, what kind of positions you're looking for. And it's just like a really, really good source of data so that you, before that promotion conversation, you can go in equipped. It's almost like you're preparing your case to go into like a court of law. And whatever you bring up, evidence, it has to be like evidence that is submissible,
Quantifiable.
Quantifiable.
Yeah.
It has to be like, you asked me to produce X and I have delivered 150% of X. The market standard for my range is this to this to this, right? You cannot just be like, wow, very sian, I've had a promotion for like 3 years and I feel very sad.
But I have a question. What
Sure.
about people who don't have any experience at all? So there's no
Yes.
data to prove that, okay, I kind of changed the company in this way.
Right.
Yeah.
So like fresh grads.
Fresh grads.
If you have absolutely no experience, how do you quantify yourself? Okay. There's 3 dimensions: past, present, and future. So the first one, past, you must be able to talk about experiences that you've had in the past. So even if I'm a fresh grad from NUS, and I'm applying for like an advertising firm, I can say, well, look at, these are the internships I've done, the past experiences. This is how I added value in my internships. These are some leadership roles in some ECAs or whatever clubs that I've done. Here are some overseas experiences I had with a school project where I had to do this and this. So you have to think about what you've done in the past. And then the second tranche is the present. What can you right here, right now, bring to the company? So maybe it's like, I'm really good at AI prompt engineering. I'm great at UX for websites. So these are my current competencies, yeah? The last thing is the future. So you want to kind of articulate to them, if you hire me, this is the kind of future potential that I can have for your company. So for instance, if you hire me, like I think that I'm going to be able to, for instance, come up with a new social media strategy that could maybe be worth as much as X amount of money. Or maybe I've been looking at your website for the company and the website really sucks or whatever, tactful way of saying it. And then say like, I have an idea we can increase lead generation by like 20%, something like that.
So Crystal, just now you mentioned about how some people are afraid of confrontations or rather having discussions with their bosses, right? So when is a good time to actually sit down with your boss to discuss about salary or increments?
Yes, timing in life is everything, right? So you want to make sure, of course, sanity check that there are no active fires going on, like it's audit season or
like
it's like
layoffs happening.
Layoffs happening, then everyone mood down and your boss is so stressed out. Secondly, like, it's normally at a time where you feel the value that you've delivered is really over and beyond what you were asked to do. So for instance, if you had just finished like a huge project where like, wow, all the managing directors are sending all those thank you emails to you and everything, right? Then like, this is maybe a good opportunity to have a career goals discussion with your boss and kind of like bring it up, not as a, boss, I want to talk to you about my pay, but like, I love to sit down and talk about like, how I can add more value to this team and have some ideas on how I can contribute even more for the next phase. So it's almost like a kind of like strategic discussion rather than a me kind of discussion.
Yeah. So it's basically a case of you need to show your boss how you can give additional value
Yes.
to justify the pay that you're asking for.
Correct. When we look at promotions as senior leaders, there's 3 buckets of factors that we use to determine whether somebody is promotable. The first bucket of factors is what we call like irrelevant or hygiene factors. That just means like you show up on time, you produce reasonable work, you dress properly. That is like just what is expected. You know what I mean? Just because you do all of these factors, it doesn't mean that you deserve a promotion. Category 2 is like factors that make you ineligible for promotion. For example, you are uncollaborative.
Right.
Or people give you feedback and you refuse to change. Okay. So in every kind of job, there's certain things that will make you kind of like not a good fit for a promotion. And then the third category is more strategic skills that make you eligible for a more leadership role. It is all about like difficult conversation skills, social emotional intelligence, empathy, crystal clear, no pun intended, communication, so you have to also show like, what am I doing that makes me really like leadership high, what they call hypo. Hypo stands for high potential. What makes me a hypo?
Okay. As a freelancer, do you relate to all of this?
I have a lot of trauma from my first full-time job and I jumped back to the freelance world real quick because HR was also biz dev and also founder, and it was just difficult. I remember having a salary negotiation and I'm quite okay at advocating for myself, but if I sense that the person is demeaning, it's a very uncomfortable conversation to have, especially when you're not leaving the job. Then if they say no and the conversation was unpleasant, you still need to clock into work the next day and act like everything was okay, even though you were blatantly disrespected on the call. So I think that's also something to consider. Like, being a good advocate for yourself is one aspect, but if it fails, then it's a very difficult work environment already. So how do you navigate this conversation with your difficult boss?
It's a little bit like in relationships as well, right? If you kind of bring up the conversation and you frame it in a way that's like, okay, either you marry me, otherwise I'm out of here. It's kind of like an ultimatum, and then it makes people feel like damn uncomfortable, right? So
Like it's a threat.
Exactly. It's like either there's a future or there isn't a future. So it becomes very binary. And I think that's one of the biggest dangers about like these sort of promotion conversations. People feel like it's a like black or white thing. Either I got it or I didn't get it. Either I'm a winner or I'm a loser, or failure or success. But it's not like that. It's actually like you got to think about these types of career discussions as more like career alignment discussions.
Right.
I have certain things, certain values that I want from my career, and it's not all about money. Yeah, you cannot be like, I go into this conversation, I only want this one number, I'm so fixated on it.
Yeah.
It's true. I think the intention is really important, and also just being realistic. Like, I felt like I was doing too much work for the amount of money I was being compensated for. So I said, either you give me a raise or we stay at the same pay, but you need to reduce my workload.
Right.
So I'm being flexible
Yes.
and realistic. I mean, you can't work me like that and give me this.
Yeah.
But then if you don't have the budget, then you need to like lessen my workload lah. And in the end, we went with the raise.
That's a super smart way of doing it, because you were like showing that you're flexible, and you're also talking about your values. Like, of course, there's fairness. Fairness is one value. I want to be compensated this way. And another value you brought is like also like work-life balance. Yeah. So it's like something's got to give, right?
Do you feel that in your experience, there's a different way to approach these conversations with bosses who are also founders versus a boss or a manager, right, that is a fellow employee like you?
1000%. So I think there's a very, very big difference between working for startups and working for established companies.
Okay, wait. Before we hear words of wisdom from the Crystal, please subscribe to us. Hit the button below, hit the bell so you get notified every time we post a video.
I think there's a very, very big difference between working for startups and working for established companies. And even within established companies, there's different sectors. Certain sectors, there is like a lot of bureaucracy and hierarchy. So like it's literally like there is a table, and then there's a certain, after 2.5 years, then and then the pay increment must be this much. And then like if you do anything out of line, HR really hates it, because like let's say this firm has got 10,000 people. If one person then breaks the rules, then everybody else will be like complaining, how come this person does? So they try as much as possible to kind of really put you in a box. Yeah. So in those kind of cultures, it can be very hard to get them to be flexible, and you have to be realistic. A lot of times they will only promote you if they really think that you are unusually valuable on the market, or if like your flight risk. If there's a risk that you go and you're kind of indispensable. Then on the other end of the extreme end, we have startups. Startups is essentially like,
Saikang.
it's
The
like,
Wild West.
yeah, but it's like we are building the rocket ship, and then you're asking which chair you have on the rocket ship. I'm trying to make this damn rocket ship take off, and then
Yeah.
like we are here arguing also which chair and like how much or whatever. So startups are normally quite stressed out. They're quite chaotic, right? And they don't normally have like a well-established HR. However, this presents a very interesting opportunity because when you work at a startup, one thing that we always say is that when there's a gray area, there's an opportunity for arbitrage. So therefore, in startups, because there's this gray area about what actually is your job scope, what actually is your value and all of this, you can really, if you are very entrepreneurial, you can take the initiative to really job craft and say that actually I've noticed there's this opportunity. Like nobody's doing anything with whatever this segment of it. Nobody's doing anything with this. So like I've done some research, and you come to the startup founder or whoever it is like with a plan because they're too damn busy. Okay.
Yeah.
So you need to come up with them with like some clear plan, and like I've been doing some research. I think I could make these simple changes, and I think it would take me this much amount of time. And in return for that, if I do this well after 6 months and it translates into these kinds of metrics, would you be open to considering
Right.
a pay rise commensurate with the value I've created?
It's like you're pitching yourself to do side projects. for the
Exactly. You are
company.
pitching. You're all the time as a little entrepreneur. Have that entrepreneurial mindset. Go and spot an opportunity. And if there's a gray area, good. If your workplace is chaotic, good. If your team is a lot of people leaving, good. In some level, if you are smart and you know how to capitalize on that gray area, you can move up very, very, very fast. Yeah.
A lot of people look at like a lot of employees leaving as like a red flag potentially. But sometimes if there's no turnover, then you can't move also.
That's true. But also certain industries, that's just the way it is lah.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go out on a whim and guess that you're a glass half full person.
Positive.
Yeah, great, we're good.
Well, okay, I have to say that I'm not for toxic positivity. If somebody does something that's really crosses the line, I'm not going to be like, yeah, kumbaya. I just like think on the bright, look at the bright
Yeah.
side, right? But like, I think generally I have a great conviction that like I can kind of twist it around and find something in there for me to like play
to
the,
make it work for you.
to make it work. Yeah.
So how should you negotiate for a better pay?
Yeah, so there's a couple of strategies here. The first one is that you could talk about, you could say to your boss, hey, I wonder whether you have like 10 minutes to discuss some ideas that I have for contributing more to this team. Okay, so that's the contribution approach. The second approach is like what I call like the surprise approach. So surprise approach is not that you surprise your boss. It's like you bring it up your boss in a very casual way where, you say something along the lines of, there's been something that's been on my mind recently. And I just wanted to be very transparent and share that I was quite surprised that a company approached me with a job offer that was like 30% or 50% above my current salary. And, I turned them down because I'm really passionate about my job, or I'm excited about my job and our opportunities. And at the same time, it also did start me wondering about like what I could do in my current role that would, bring my salary more in line with this job offer that I was offered. You know
This
what I mean?
kind can
love
bluff
this.
or not?
Can, why cannot?
Why cannot? Who's going to say?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
can.
this. And then you use this to prove your loyalty to the company.
Yes.
And they're like, wow, you chose to stay. Let's grow
I
together.
guess just thinking about lying, I'm just scared.
No. Wait. we don't want to lie. Remember I said like you have to go and talk to headhunters regularly. But generally, those headhunter conversations, they would already say to you, I'm assuming that you have some
That's
kind
some
of
homework
proof.
lah.
So it's not like you're pretending that a
30% is
conversation-
not plucked from me.
It's not just like anyhow
Yeah,
blood,
not pretending a
It's not
conversation
pretending.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like something that like proves that you are high trust or high loyalty as well as high results. If I feel like you're just in it for the money, then you go out to the highest bidder, I may not promote you. So like that's one approach. I think the third approach is the advice approach, whereby you would say to your boss, hey, there's been something on my mind recently, and I would love if you could give me some advice for 10 minutes.
Ooh,
Okay, so
yes.
the advice approach is very non-confrontational. So it's very, very indirect. It's like, hey, I wonder whether in your career, boss, you've been working for like 20 years, right? There must have been times where you felt that your contributions were kind of like not in line. And when you were in those situations where you felt you were ready for something bigger and maybe the organization hadn't offered you those opportunities, what did you do? Or what advice would you give me about it? And I think that way is like very kind of like,
Wow.
You just take the mirror, then you like that.
that's you.
No reverse cut.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Actually, it's all mind games.
The thing is that like once you get into leadership, everything is influencing. You need to kind of try to bring up harmonious, methods to deal with
You
this.
soft sell a bit. Yeah.
A little bit more indirect, perhaps,
Okay.
but kind of conveys
Right.
your point.
Yeah.
So actually, right, okay, now that you bring it up and then you say, maybe in your mind, you're thinking 10% or 15%
Wow,
based on your
only, ah.
based on your conversation with your headhunter lah,
Yes,
your headhunter
yes.
friend.
Uh-huh.
Then your boss says, okay, I'll sort it out. Then a few weeks later, they come back and says, I'm giving you 8%.
Right.
So how should you feel about that?
Okay, firstly, always try to ask for a little bit more.
So there's a bit of buffer lah.
So there's a bit of
Okay.
buffer, but you can give a range.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, 20 to 30%, that sort of thing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that when you have the conversation with your boss, it's not over at the end of the conversation. You have to follow up with an email. And this is very important, because a lot of times it becomes very vague. If you don't have anything in writing, then after that, people can misremember.
Misremember is a very nice way to...
Misrepresent. Forget.
I think the kids nowadays call it gaslighting.
Yeah, gaslighting. Yeah. No, you didn't say that. No, that's not what we agreed at all.
Like
yeah.
in front of the CCTV, they still can forget to remember.
Yeah,
Forget to
exactly.
remember.
That is why as soon as it happens, as fresh as it is, you go back to your desk and you start drafting already. This is what we discussed, blah, blah, blah. Don't let anybody gaslight you. This
Or
is
you
what
whip out
happened.
your phone and like,
It
boss, you
happens.
say again.
You say again.
One more time, one more time.
Yeah, and the way you send that email is not like, hey, by the way, for our records, this is what you said. It's a thank you note. So it's like, thanks so much for that discussion. I really felt like it was really important for me and da da da. And then like just to recap, here's what we talked about. So you have a record. Yes.
Oh, okay.
You may not get that promotion immediately, but if you have emails showing that you have been consistent, there has been a trajectory of you having these discussions and everything, it's very hard for people to like turn you down or
There's
gaslight
a
or
paper
gaslight you.
trail.
Yes, there's a paper trail.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens if you're rejected based on the salary and increment that you're requesting for? And when is it time to call it quits?
If you're rejected, it depends on how the rejection was phrased as well, right? I think it's important to have a conversation where it's like, okay, I had a request, and then you came back and you said it wasn't possible. I want to understand. Is it that it's not possible now for certain reasons? Like, what was the decision-making process around that? And then, ask them like within the next 6 to 12 months, what is it that I could do or that would make this possible? A lot of managers, like bad managers, they were just, actually, I don't know lah. It's out of my hands. Then already like they weren't serious, right?
Yeah, they didn't fight for you
They
lah,
didn't fight for
essentially.
you
Yeah.
and they weren't serious. But if they actually have like some kind of like clear path, they have a strategy. It's like, okay, it's not possible right now because it's off cycle. However, I got a plan. In 3 months' time, we're going to do a round of a mid-year, whatever. I plan to put you out for a mid-year. Then like I would have a little bit more faith in that process. And in the meantime, I would also ask as well if there's other things, just like you did, that they could do. Like, could you work from home? Could you have different responsibilities, etc.? So when should you actually throw in the towel and call it quits, right? Of course, like outright red flags where it's like your boss like sexually harassed you or there's like bullying at work, that one is immediately quit.
That one is
right?
severance, yeah. You
Yeah.
should get a package for that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a lawsuit, honestly.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Just last week, I had somebody that said like every time like her boss would come up behind her and like stroke her back up and down. Yeah.
Stop. Don't
it's
do
so
it.
disgusting.
No.
I know, right?
Oh my
but then they're
God.
like, oh, but he does that with everyone on the team. so that it's become like a culture. I'm like, gross, backstroking culture, very gross, you know.
Unless you work for OSIM and it's with a robot hand, don't do it.
But
Then
actually,
can you imagine if I'm on the team, then he don't stroke my back? How?
You're the only one. You're the
If I'm
only
the
one.
only one that don't stroke.
no, then you present to him like, hey, I think you forgot.
Boss,
I think you forgot
how did I
something.
do
Did you
today,
forget
boss?
me?
I always recommend that you do a SWOT analysis. Do you know what a SWOT analysis
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
right? So you do your strengths, your weaknesses, and then there's opportunities, which is like, what opportunities do you see in this field? Maybe like your sector has a lot of opportunities. Like it's booming at the moment, like the creator industry. Wow, it's got a lot of potential. Or maybe your firm is like, wow, Microsoft or Nvidia, and it's like, you know, it's going
Yep.
up and up, right? But then of course there's the threats, right? If you do your threats analysis, like maybe there's more threats than opportunities. Maybe my sector is like a sunset sector, or maybe it's something that retrenchment's all the place, or whatever it is that. So after you do your analysis, then you figure out like, what is my position? Do I actually have a better opportunity waiting for me out there, or should I perhaps like bide my time and kind of accumulate experience and learning? So always say either I'm learning or I'm earning, right? So you either earn or you make sure that what you're doing is something that you're accumulating all this invaluable experience.
Interesting. It's like a portfolio thing.
Yes, absolutely. I once made this viral TikTok, which is about like doing your own career brag book or like your career portfolio tracker. So this is like an Excel file, right?
He's very happy.
You're happy.
Yeah,
He
I
love
love
Excel.
You
Excel
love
sheets.
this kind of
He
thing,
tracked
right?
his sleep also.
Oh yeah, watch the episode.
and my water intake
Yeah.
and things like
Oh my god. Yeah. Okay. So this is perfect for you, right? Maybe we can do a collab. Maybe you can come up with a template because my audience wants it.
Okay, can.
So, but what you should do is like, okay, Excel spreadsheet, right? So the first column is like, okay, the projects that you worked on, the milestones that you achieved in those projects. And by the way, a lot of people think that it's just like profit or like sales kind of jobs. It's not true. Even if you're working back-end kind of jobs, you can talk about internal milestones like, it used to take us 10 steps to do this back-end process, and now I reduce it to 3 steps. Okay, so you collect those metrics that matter. That's the first column. The second column is like praise that you got from people. So let's say your clients gave you praise or somebody wrote you a thank you email. And a lot of times we're like, okay, very nice. And then we forget about it. But collect like literally screenshot or cut and paste all that praise and like put it in a damn file. Okay, because it's ammunition. And then the third thing is like feedback that you've gotten, which was developmental feedback. So let's say like your boss said, oh, actually, I need you to improve on this part. You also want to capture it. Because life is not all roses, right? You also want to capture like, this is the developmental feedback and here's what I did about it. Here's how I improved myself. And then after that fourth column, you want to talk about like also like the skills that you've learned. This year, I went on all of these, whatever, NTUC, whatever, SkillsFuture, whatever, learning courses, and I've picked up all these skills. So the thing is that this career tracker is damn important, okay? Because like, I'm not saying that you should just like, you send it to your boss, okay? I'm not saying like attach the file and like, look over here, but it is for yourself. So that when you go into those like promotion discussions or whatever, end of the year performance review, all that, right? A lot of times we can't remember unless it's Mr. Excel here lah. But you know, a lot of times for a lot of us, we only remember the past 2-3 months.
True. It's
Then
true.
the remainder 9 months, if you're not disciplined about it, completely forgotten, you know?
Yeah,
But it
yeah.
counts for the whole year. You're being compensated. Your bonus is for the whole year. So that's why I really think that is a good thing to do, to have this sort of career tracker approach and like be very disciplined about it. Yeah.
I'm gonna start doing that.
Yeah. Journaling, but like office journaling.
Yeah.
Corporate journaling.
Yes.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of The Hot Pot. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and MeListen.
And subscribe to us if you haven't already.
And of course, a huge thank you as well to Crystal for joining us. Invaluable tips.
I learned so much. And it was so crystal clear.
Oh, wow. It's like a
Amazing.
slideshow, but verbal.
Huh?
Just purely verbal.
I love it.
Veteran educator.
Love.
We will see you on the next episode.
Bye.